Hello, happy 2025. If you're watching this in 2025 or maybe in the future, but the purpose of this video is to tell you about how to do a play in your classroom. So, a play for you might seem like a big thing to do. Luckily at my school we have a stage, but you can also just do it in your classroom, make a part of your classroom a stage, or a part area of your school a stage area that doesn't have to be raised or anything. It could just be like in a floor area, and have the chair set up for the parents to come see it at some point. So we're first going to talk about the very beginning, brainstorming the idea. At the very end of this video, I'm going to go through the last 3 years of plays we have done in my classroom. And what's nice about this is that they're all student written, all student driven. The students pick their characters. It is very a student led play, which goes well with the Montessori method. So the first thing you want to do is brainstorm. Think of an idea as a whole class, have a whole class group, and weed through the ideas that you want, that the students want, and that you can figure in to see how to make. And the most important thing is that everybody has a part. So pick a play in which everybody has a part. For example, this is going to be one I show you later. This December, the past last month, we did the play. We always do it in the before we go on the break in the December, and we did it about the planets. And why does this work? Because I'll talk about this a little later, but you have the older students, like the third years, or maybe you have just first and second years, or whoever the oldest student is in your class, be on stage the majority of the time, because this is their last play. And if you did it like all 3 years they're in your classroom, then they'll say, oh, like I'm at the first part of I'm the person on the stage the most because I'm the oldest, and they take accountability in that. So I had 4 of my third years up on the stage, and then the other one the whole time because they were astronauts, and then the other one was the Milky Way galaxy, so that was also the major part, but he was not on the stage the whole time. So what happens then is they have it a issue like a plot. So it's the planets were out of order and the Milky Way needed them to get mixed up again, and the students picked this plot. Like, students are very creative. So what happens with that is then each other student got to be a planet, or if you have multiple students, maybe you want to add more. In other plays it works better with there's multiple students because there's multiple planets, but for this play in particular, one student was one planet. So while the astronauts were out there the whole time, each student came one by one up to the stage, said their lines, the astronauts, and then they would go back into the classroom and then go back and forth like that, so everybody gets a part. And even if students say they maybe don't want a part, they don't have to have a speaking part. I haven't had that happen besides once, but they still went up on stage because the parents come and they want to see it. And usually in Montessori classrooms, everybody feels very comfortable with each other and so acclimated with each other that usually they don't make a big deal about being up on the stage. And then once you have a bunch of different ideas in which could fit hey, we can have multiple people come out at once or one person at a time, so everybody gets a major part, because not that then, or their own independent part, or their part with partners, then you want to take a vote on which one they like the best idea of. And usually it's tied to some cultural topic in my plays. So once you have the plot, you then want to decide the characters. So you want to have each student pick their own characters, and usually I'll let the third years go first. So they usually pick the parts which they'll be out there the longest, but sometimes they don't, and sometimes a second year or even a first year, if they can remember a lot of lines, which all the students, I'm going to give you the timeline of the plays at the end of how to make a play, and there are you practice so much that these students just learn their lines and everything, and it's a lot of fun. So pick the parts and then make sure everybody has a part. So another one we did was like traveling through time. So there was like a few cavemen, there was a few of the Egyptians. So things like that too. If you have a larger classroom, there could be multiple of the same people in a group. but just make sure everybody has a part, and really let the students say, hey, this is my part. And maybe some people want a part that's different than another person, but they just have to agree that this is what the part is. And that's why it kind of works better with the majority system of the third years get to pick first, and then the second years, and then the first years, because hopefully those first and second years will stay for the next year and get to do that part. Okay, so now we're getting in the writing, and I have up on the screen next to me that everybody should, it should be like a journey to somewhere. Like we've done like a missing present, or no, excuse me, searching for a present for a friend, or traveling through time, or putting the planets back in order, where there's multiple stops. So, but what you want to do is you want to have the students sit down all together and start to write the play. And when it gets to their individual parts, then everybody can break up to groups. Students can go back to work while you sit one-on-one with a group of students that are in that scene, and either have them type it, or I like to type it, because then they say what they want to say, and that way the students get to pick what they want to say, so hopefully it's easier to remember. Sometimes obviously you have to let the students also pick what they want to say. I mean, what they want to say, but also hone it in so it makes sense for the plot as well. And on this screen, because I mentioned everything else on this one, but let them be silly, because a lot of lines the students write, the parents will laugh in the thing when they're supposed to laugh. And it's really fun to see this, because one of my tips for later is to have the students practice for the other classes, or other early childhood classes or toddler classes, whatever classes you have in your school, before the parent program. And the day in the morning of the parent program, we have my students perform it for the other classes in the school, and then in the afternoon the parents come in. But they get nervous the first time they perform in front of someone, so make sure they have an opportunity before that day to perform in front of other classes. And we don't use microphones or anything, so because our stage is right next to the audience, but have them speak loudly. Just practice projecting their voice, not screaming, but clearly and slowly. I always like to say, a lot of your grandparents are coming, make sure they will be able to hear you, that type of thing. But I would let them be silly, because some of the silly lines the parents really laugh at, and they're like, how did you come up with that? I'm like, well, the students wrote it, and it's a lot of fun, like silly within reason. Like, for example, in this last one with the planets, like Neptune, Uranus, the planet, is tilted. So the lines, I'm more tilted than usual. And then there's a line that it was something like, it causes me to say things slow, like, whoa. And then the astronaut said, okay, see you soon. And the parents laughed at that part. So it's not like silly, but it's just creative lines that they want to say. Okay, once everybody has their part, everybody has the script all written, you read through it. Now it's time to practice. So what that looks like is, my tips for that are to number the pages of the script, because when you print it back and forth, the students are like, what page are we on? And also, you yourself as the teacher or your assistant too, can go in and highlight the individual parts. So on the script, I have who's who, like which characters listed on top, and then I just go straight into the script and I highlight their part in the script, so I can see that. I also like to have a lot of like at the beginning and at the end, like all the astronauts, for example, had a line to say together, so highlight that for them. At the end, I always have the students thank the other group, so when thank you for, the planets were like, thank you for putting us back in order, and then the astronauts go, you're welcome. So it's just things like that at the end where they say it all together. That's a fun. I practice at first reading the script twice a day. We do a group where we usually read a book before lunch and then read a chapter book after lunch. And the book before lunch, I just like, it's usually a picture book, so I skip that part when it's play season and they read their script. And then after lunch, I'll read the chapter book still. But that afternoon, when we're starting to practice on the stage later, we'll do it twice a day, once in the morning and then one, like just reading it, and then once in the afternoon. once you've practiced a lot, it's time to make the props slash costumes. So tablecloths work really well, just like the plastic tablecloths from the store for different costumes. Some years we didn't even have costumes, they just focused on the props. So unfortunately, I was the one, the teacher, that had to go and change the props. I mean, yeah, their settings each time. Like we did traveling through the continents to find a missing present for a friend. So on each continent, we had a different scene. So in between the students coming out, I would go up there and change the scene. So here's just another reminder to practice at least once a day on the stage or performance area for 4 to 6 weeks before you actually do the production, and the props can slowly trickle in. We like sometimes it takes longer, the costumes, and the majority of the time I will not practice with their costumes so they don't get ruined, but like closer to the day, like 1 week before, we'll practice with like the whole thing, because it's more important that they get their lines right than the props and the costumes. So I focus heavy on learning their lines, and they do such a good job. Even if a student can't read yet, they could still learn a line and or line or lines and say it. Usually if it's a student that just comes out and they're not on stage the whole time, they'll have between 3 to 5 lines or 2 to 3 lines depending, but the parents are still so proud of them that they can do it. And here's the thing, because it is slightly stressful as the teacher to put this on and think, oh no, what are the parents going to think? Will these students actually pull it together? Because at sometimes you practice so much that the students are like, oh my goodness, we've done this so much. But I promise on the day, or every year it's like, come on students, make sure you do it, come on. And then when their parents come, it's autopilot. You know how you get up and like say something in front of an audience and you practice like a speech so much because you go on autopilot when you get up there, and the practice is just like muscle memory at that point. So it's important to remember for the teacher that students will pull it together when their parents are sitting there and watching them. They will do their best performance. In the past 3 years, it's always happened like that, and every year I'm like, I don't know if they're gonna do it good for the parents, because that's the best part, but like what should be their best performance, but somehow it always works out and they want to impress their parents, and the parents are always like, whoa, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're also wanting to do a play in December, this is how I set up the timeline. At the first 2 weeks of October, we brainstorm ideas. Usually it's just a day. 2 to 3 days, like letting the idea settle, and if we all still agree on it, we'll start writing the play, and that takes 2 to 3 weeks. So then by the first 1 to 2 weeks of November, the play is finished, the writing, and it's printed out, and we start practicing it. We read for all of November basically, and at the very end of November, we start practicing on the stage with like any scenes that have to be changed to. Maybe even, yeah, like that last week of November, we practice on the stage with the props. And then the last 2 weeks of December before the play, because usually I have it like the second week of December. That way we come back from that, like in America it's Thanksgiving break, and we have a few more weeks to practice so that the students remember. And then about the second week of December, the parents can be invited in so they know. And I also have it on the calendar at the beginning of the year so the parents know that it's coming up in December, but I don't pick the actual day until probably a little bit before Thanksgiving, so then they know that day, because we usually have the play start at 2, and the play only lasts 15 to 20 minutes, which is about a 7-page play. So if you're looking for that timeline, if you have like 7 pages with the scene changes and the having the kids walk out on stage and away, it would be about 7 pages for 15 to 20 minutes. And then the students, all their families there, so they just get to leave after that. But I don't do it after school or anything, because then I know all the students are there. And also, this always happens too, and inevitably somebody will be absent the whole, like a few days before the play, so you have to hurry up and do an understudy for somebody, but on the play day they actually show up, usually all of them, because the parents know it's that day. So the thing is, the kids have heard these lines so many times that they could recite the whole play for each other, with each other's parts. So usually having an understudy isn't super important, unless it's like a major part that's on the stage the whole time. But usually, unless it's, they get super sick, or if it's an unfortunate event occurs. But luckily I've had all my students there, but it's always, again, nerve-wracking for the teacher, like, make sure you're here on the play day. Every year though, it's somebody gets sick, somebody gets something, and then it's like, oh no, hurry, you need to learn their lines. But then they just know them because they've heard the play over and over and over, because we practiced so much. Okay, here are just some general tips. Make sure to have all the students come out at the end in some capacity. So at the beginning of the play, I will go up and thank the parents for coming and say the title of the play, and I say, which you've probably never heard of before, because the students not only wrote the play, they also act in the play. They've made all the props you see on the play. It's a very student-led production, and it is. So if another tip I have on here is to make a play card to put on the seat so that they can keep it. We just make ours on like Canva, a free one, and on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, I print 4 out on them. So it's a card, then I cut out the 4 pieces and I laminate them, and then cut out the lamination. So it's like a nice keepsake for the parents. And on there I have the title of the play, like December of whatever year. It says like Miss Bethany's lower elementary class presents, and then what the play is. And then it lists all the characters and then the students, and I do it in the way they come out. So I always say, and here's the order for when your student will come out, so then the parents also know when they expect their kid to come out. And then I say, at the end of the play, they will all come back out and sing a song, and then you can enjoy cookies and refreshments with your children, and then you can have a lovely weekend. Well, we did ours on Friday this time, so telling them like, hey, you can take your children with you, at the end of the play, since they're all there, and it's an hour before they have to go home, so it's kind of nice. And then the parents help clean up after, just getting the chairs and stuff. But a lot of extended family members come, grandpa, grandmas, aunts, uncles, things like that. It's a lot of fun, siblings. But the play cards, I was like, oh, that's so cute. So it's just little things that are free because you have all the stuff at your school just to print, copy, laminate, and then it's a lot of fun. Okay, so here are just some ideas. The first one is traveling through each continent. So that one was, we had 2 friends that needed a present for their friend, and they couldn't decide what to get them, so they went to every single continent and got a present. And you see a plane there because someone was the flight attendant and would take the students, or the 2 students looking for the presents, to the different continents. So in between each continent, the flight attendant went out because we needed an extra part, because there's only 7 continents, So then, as you could see there, we went to Park Güell in España, or Spain, and then that ocean scene, they actually had made that in their art class, and it was hung up in the school for a long time. So I said, hey, can we just use that for Australia, like the Great Barrier Reef? And then you could see the camel in Africa, in the Sahara Desert, and then we went to Antarctica, and then we went to the Amazon rainforest in South America, which we just put like big trees up with just construction paper, and the kids made animals for that. But on each of those, I went back and forth to set up in between, so that was a lot of fun too. Okay, and then the next year we did traveling through time. So we went, there was about 4 of like the main characters on stage the whole time. What were they looking for? I gotta think about that one, but they went through all the ones we use in the Montessori card. So they went to cavemen with the cave, the Egyptian pyramids, the Middle Ages with that tapestry up there, and it was really funny. They're like, tapestry in their line, and the like their parents were like, how does he know what a tapestry is? Like, it's just, they, you could mind blow with the parents. It's really fun. And then also we did going through the Renaissance, and I like to contra dance, so at that part the students went in the middle of the audience because the chairs were pushed off to the side and did a little contra dance, and the parents thought that was really cool. But and then everybody at the end, you know, thanked the, they were looking for, oh, they were finding their missing friend because a friend hit a button in the time machine and then they couldn't find him, because the song at the end, that the for the continent song and this the time traveling song, the kids and I wrote the song. For the planet one, we just used a song that we wanted to sing for the planets, which was a lot of fun. But the song for that one, which just was 2 years ago and it's still in my mind, the time travelers built a time machine, but when a button was pressed, they traveled through time. They traveled through time. And then they sang like, and then we did a contra dance in the the Renaissance, and then there was the Middle Ages, and then it was just a whole song, and then they just kept singing, we traveled through time, we traveled through time, and then like first we went to with the cavemen, or you know, just different things like that. So you just pick a random like tune. We didn't base our tune off of anything, but it was just like do do to do 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 to do, a very simple one. But it was a fun this past December to just use a song about planets that we found. But it was also fun to write our own. But we did that one because the third year started was a little bit cringy to write our own song. I'm like, okay, this year, so that's why we used another one. Yeah. So that's how that happened. But it's fun for the kids to also write their song and sing their own song, because then the parents haven't heard of it either. So that's fun. And then I talked a lot about the planet one already, but here's just a little clip of like the costume ones we used for that in this next slide. Here is another costume, and then we have all of the planets. This is actually for South America Day. Let me move this and I'll show you this in a second. But here's the Milky Way galaxy, and then all the different planets we've got going so far. But thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about how to make a play in your classroom, you can either comment below, or you can email me at bethany@partsofthelanguage.com. All my things are down below if you want to join the free resource hub, or if you want to look at my other products. Scope and Sequence and Maps have changed everything about how I do this, and it's taking me years to get a good scope and sequence and map, and I finally did it, so you can look at that below and everything. So thank you so much for watching.